Let's dive into the discussions shaping the nation.
Thank you, Comptroller. Minister, I'm glad to speak in support of this motion. As members of Dáil Éireann, we stand here this evening not just as a voice for our businesses, our farmers and indeed our communities, but as advocates for the great resilience and spirit that define our nation. But it is essential that we have lessons learned. In recent years, we have witnessed the devastating impact of severe weather events, from floods, storms and indeed snowstorms, that have wreaked havoc on our agricultural community, on our local enterprise and indeed our community in general. What we have seen in recent weeks, and indeed following other devastating weather events in Ireland, is a trail of emotional devastation that often goes unnoticed amidst the physical destruction. The psychological impact on individuals and communities has been profound and will be long-lasting for those most severely affected, affecting their mental health and indeed overall well-being. In the immediate aftermath of these weather events, the last thing people who are affected need is the trauma and difficulty of dealing with applications that are complicated, with forms that need to be filled in, and with statutory agencies who seem to require more and more. This is especially true for those in our communities who are vulnerable, for those in our communities who are elderly, and for those in our communities who need that extra little bit of support. The sudden loss of homes, possessions, property, equipment, livelihoods can lead to a huge sense of helplessness. We've already listened to people in isolated areas call out their feelings of helplessness and deep frustration as they navigate the chaos and uncertainty that follows. Their emotional toll is compounded by the disruption of their social networks and community support systems. The extended loss of power, water and communication systems has left them with a sense of abandonment. This should never be the case in the Ireland that we all aspire to serve in. We have also sadly seen the loss of life as a result of Storm Éowyn and its aftermath. We can only begin to imagine the dreadful impact that these tragic deaths have had on the families and communities affected, and our sympathies go to them all. These people, these communities, simply cannot be expected to deal with the trauma they are experiencing, while possibly at the same time having to deal with the red tape and bureaucracy as they attempt to rebuild both physically and emotionally. The elderly, the vulnerable, those in need of specialist services and equipment cannot be expected to live or act normally without the immediate required state services and interventions. It behoves us to do better. Whilst my own county escaped relatively unscathed in comparison to other areas, Wexford has seen devastating weather events over the recent years. Storm Emma, or the Beast from the East as it was called, created havoc when we were hit without power and water for extended periods, and only for the heroic actions of our emergency services and our local authority workers at that time, the impact and damage would have been much more sustained. Christmas Day 2021 will live long in the memory of the people of Bridgetown and Duncormac as a result of the devastating flooding of homes. In late 2022, a tornado ripped through the villages of Folks Mills and Clongeen in South Wexford, causing hundreds of thousands of euros in damage to farms in particular. I know from dealing with people affected at that time that the response in terms of aid was far from satisfactory, with people still to this day endeavouring to recover financially. The people of Enniscorthy live in annual fear that the River Slaney will burst its banks and once again inundate Island Road and Temple Shannon with floodwater, destroying homes and businesses for the want of a decades-long promised flood relief defence scheme. Wexford Town has also seen serious flooding incidents over the years. These events are not merely statistics. They are the stories of our neighbours, our friends and our families. They are the lifeblood of our economy, and they are in desperate need of our attention and, more importantly, at this time, our action. This evening, it's clear that we must confront a stark reality. Our current response mechanisms to these crises are absolutely inadequate. Time and again, we have seen businesses and farms struggle to recover from the aftermath of extreme weather. They face not only the physical destruction of their properties, but also the emotional toll of uncertainty and despair. And our patchwork of ad hoc responses, whilst well-intentioned, are simply not enough. It is beyond time for us to establish a permanent statutory response mechanism that provides consistent, reliable support for those affected by these disasters. One of the components of this motion calls for the expansion of the humanitarian assistance scheme to include businesses, sporting clubs, voluntary organisations and community groups who have been impacted by the storm, as it was after Storm Babette, and we fully support this call also. Given the nature of climate change that is happening on a regular and much more frequent basis, and indeed a much more severe basis if our experience of Storm Éowyn is anything to go by, then the notion of an ad hoc approach or an incident-by-incident approach is just not acceptable. Communities, businesses and our farmers simply cannot be expected to await a scheme approval on each occasion that they suffer the severe impacts that we witnessed just a couple of weeks ago. We need an active mechanism to be available to people when they are at their most vulnerable, to allow them to get back onto their feet as quickly as possible. Why do we need such a mechanism? First and foremost, we must recognise that climate change is not a distant threat. It is an absolute present reality. The frequency and intensity of the extreme weather events are increasing, and our farmers and often our small local enterprises and communities are on the front lines. They are the ones who face the brunt of these challenges, and they deserve more than temporary relief measures that come too late and often fall too short. Imagine a business owner, as we've seen over the past couple of weeks, who have invested years of hard work building up their businesses and creating local employment, only to see theirs and their employees' livelihoods washed or blown away in a single storm. Imagine the small shop owner who, after a lifetime of dedication, finds their shop flooded, as happened regularly in Enniscorthy, and their livelihoods threatened. The farmer who has borrowed to improve their output and improve their holdings, only to see them destroyed. These scenarios are not hypothetical. They are the lived experiences of countless individuals over many years across Ireland. We cannot afford to leave them to fend for themselves in the wake of disaster. A permanent statutory response mechanism would provide a structured and predictable framework for support. It would ensure that assistance is not a matter of chance or bureaucratic delays, but a fundamental right for those who have suffered loss due to severe weather. This mechanism should encompass financial aid, technical support and resources for rebuilding and recovery. It should be designed with input from the very communities it serves, ensuring that the solutions we implement are tailored to the unique needs of those who have suffered. One size doesn't fit all. This statutory mechanism must prioritise sustainability and resilience. It is not enough to simply rebuild what was lost. We must invest in the future. And by incorporating climate adaptation strategies and promoting sustainable practices, we can help our farmers, our businesses, our communities not only to recover but to thrive in the face of the undoubted future challenges. This is not merely an act of charity, it is an investment in the backbone of our economy. Let us remember that our response to these crises reflects our values as a society. We're a nation that prides itself on community, on solidarity and on support for one another. When a neighbour suffers, we all suffer. Therefore, it is our collective responsibility to ensure that no one is left behind in the wake of disaster. Minister, I urge you to advocate, as a matter of urgency, for the establishment of a permanent statutory response mechanism for businesses and farms and communities affected by these severe weather events. We can work together to create a system that is not only reactive but proactive, a system that embodies our commitment to resilience, sustainability and communities. Our farmers, our businesses and those communities deserve nothing less. Thank you, Deputy Lawlor.
Like, share and subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.